Hello everyone, welcome for today's video in chapter 5, data collection techniques from the book of Basic Research Methods for Librarians. Questionnaire. A questionnaire is a list of questions or items used to gather data from respondents about their attitudes, experience, or opinions. Questionnaire is the main instrument for collecting data in survey research. Different types of questionnaire. Pre-questionnaire. The planning that should go into the early development of a research study. Constructing the questionnaire. Proper construction of the questionnaire is essential to its success. In general, the researcher must consider his or her information needs and the characteristics of the participants. Skilled responses. A variety of questions utilize skills of one type or another in order to obtain responses. Question content and selection. The way in the content of questionnaire items are worded can also affect their validity and reliability. Sequence of questionnaire items. In a 1979 study, a questionnaire was asked about whether a pregnant woman should be allowed to obtain a legal abortion if she is married and does not want any more children. Preparing the first draft. This may mean ordering the items from the general to the particular, or the best arrangement may be by the subject. Evaluating the questionnaire. A person who is familiar with the topic of the questionnaire can help in assessing the phased validity of the questions. The pre-test. A pre-test gives the researcher an opportunity to identify questionnaire items that tend to be misunderstood by the participants, do not obtain the information that is needed. Final editing. Having been pre-tested, the questionnaire is ready for final editing before distribution. The interview. Developing the interview. The basic steps in developing a standardized or structured interview are not different from those for developing most other kinds of survey studies. One of the first steps must be development of the list of questions to be asked, or the interview schedule. The techniques for constructing questionnaires and structured interview schedules are quite similar and consequently will not be repeated here. Conducting the personal interview. In conducting an interview, the interviewer should attempt to create a friendly, non-threatening atmosphere, much as one does with a cover letter. The interviewer should give a brief, casual introduction to the study, stress the importance of the person's participation, and assure anonymity, or at least confidentiality when possible. Disadvantages of the interview. As with other research methods and techniques, bias presents a real threat to the validity of interviews. Particularly critical is the bias that may be introduced by the interviewer. Other steps that can be taken to help avoid or reduce interviewer bias include having the interviewer dressed inconspicuously and appropriately for the environment, holding the interview in a private setting, and keeping the interview as informal as possible. The internet interview diminishes the chances of introducing some of these biases. The internet interview utilizes computer-mediated communication, or CMC, which allows humans to interact directly with each other in synchronous or real-time using monitors, text, and keyboards. Researchers have used internet interviewing to investigate internet use and culture, the demographics and characteristics of internet users' experience with distance learning, and general human behavior. Advantages of interview. The interview does have certain important advantages. The sample of persons actually participating in a study tends to represent a large percentage of the original sample and is therefore more representative of the population that would be a sample representing a relatively low response rate. Apparently, the personal contact of the interview helps to encourage or put more pressure on person to respond fully. The personal contacts also provides a greater capacity than the mail or electronic questionnaire for the correction of misunderstandings by participants. Analysis and reporting of the focus group data. The focus group interview permits assessment of nonverbal responses and reverse group interaction patterns. The researcher analyzes the data acquired from the moderator's reports and tape interview sessions. Telephone interviews. Another important type of interview is the telephone interview, because more and more interviews are being conducted over the telephone. This technique deserves special attention. Like the researcher-administered questionnaire, the telephone interview tends to combine the advantages and disadvantages of the mail questionnaire and the personal interview. Among the advantages of the telephone interview are the following. First, it tends to provide significant savings in actual time and cost in contrast to the personal interview. Second, it can be conducted more quickly after an event has occurred. Third, it is generally easier to supervise, train, and monitor the staff for a telephone interview than for a personal interview. And telephone interviewing does require some special skills, however, that should be incorporated in the training, and telephone interviews lend themselves to a certain amount of computer assistance. One major disadvantage of the telephone interview is the process obviously favors those people who have telephones. Observation and ability testing. Observe means to watch attentively in a scientific or systematic manner. Observation is sometimes treated as a research method, sometimes as a data collection technique to be utilized with a research method. As a data collection technique, it is used in both basic and applied research and in quantitative and qualitative studies. Advantages of observational research. As a data collection technique, observation has several important advantages, including the following. First, the use of observation makes it possible to record behavior as it occurs. Second, observation allows one to compare what people actually did with what they said they did. Participants in a study may consciously or unconsciously report their behavior as different from the way it in fact occurred. The observed behavior may well be more valid. Third, observational techniques can identify behavior, action, and so on that people maybe not think to report because they seem unimportant or irrelevant. It can enable the researcher to examine the relative influence of many factors. Fourth, with observational techniques, a researcher can study subjects who are unable to give verbal reports. Fifth and the last, the use of observation is generally independent of the subject's willingness to participate. Unstructured observation. Unstructured observation is sometimes equated with participant observation, but its most important characteristic reflects the fact that the researcher does not have predetermined sets of categories of behavior to use. Structured observation. Structured observation is a more formal technique, often used in quantitative studies in order to provide systematic description or to test causal hypotheses. It may be used in field studies or in laboratory type settings, but it should focus on designated aspects of behavior.